Welcome, everyone, to the Thursday, January 21st, 2021 Helm Developer Call. So we have an agenda. We'll start with announcements and then get into discussions and then look for assignments for the next week and the next meeting. There are no announcements listed. Did anyone have an announcement they wanted to share? Crickets. All right, that means we have nothing. In that case, we can jump right into the discussion. And the first discussion is Helm 3.5.1.
And
It
I
points
added
to the
this to the agenda, and I just wanted probably Farina to give us what are we looking for? Call to action. Anything about 3.5.1. I noticed there were a couple of things in the milestone, and I thought, we have a few weeks. Let's talk about what should be in there.
All right. Now, this is a patch fix milestone, and I have not done any triage on it yet. So the due date for 3.5.1 is currently set at February 10th, because the second Wednesday of a month is when we do a patch release, unless a security release or something else supersedes it, and it would get renamed. So we're looking at this particular release. And right now, there's 3 issues in the backlog. And one of them, they're all fixes. And they either have changes, 2 of them have changes requested on them already. Okay. And so we need to go through and probably start issue triaging things we think we can get merged for that patch fix release that's just bug fixes. Did anybody have anything in particular they wanted to look at for this? One of the things that's not in this is we'll probably be updating to Kubernetes libraries for 20.2 that's out. I see Dependabot has a bunch of PRs for that. We'll actually need to close those and have one for ourselves, because they do each one of those individual dependencies as their own, and it doesn't hit them all. It's very weird, right? We've got 5 dependencies on Kubernetes libraries. And so Dependabot's done 3 PRs that hit just 3 of them as individual PRs rather than them all together. We need a pull request that does all 5 together. And just one pull request. If somebody wants to do that, that's great. If not, I can get to it in another week or so. But that's one of the things that'll probably go into it. I didn't add this to it. I'm just rambling now. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to talk about when it comes to 3.5.1?
Quick question on those Dependabot alerts. So those are something that would be visible to the maintainers only, right? I was just wondering.
Just closing those. It doesn't have to be a maintainer that does the upgrade of all the Kubernetes libraries. It's a go mod file change. And then the go sum file, when you run make, will automatically be updated. And then you create a pull request for something like to Kubernetes 0.20.2 is the versions. It's a super simple pull request and anybody can do it.
Right. Unless, of course, it gets you into some dependency hell. But then I think that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is
Kubernetes
GitHub issue? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there is no GitHub issue for it yet.
Okay.
And this, when you're dealing with the patch releases for a Kubernetes release, are usually those aren't breaking. Those are always super simple. They only take, every time I've done it, it's taken me a few minutes.
Right. Okay. I can try taking a shot at it, and I can let you know by today evening if that goes well, just so that you don't wait for me forever and it doesn't happen.
I won't be looking at it for at least a week. So go ahead. You've got plenty of time.
Okay, awesome. I'll give that a shot.
All right. Did anybody else have anything? Because I threw something on here and we had something for storage, which was Joe, who is not on here. I had one performance improvement topic that I threw on because we have all of this time. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to talk about before we get into what Matt threw on there to fill the time?
I mean, we can also mention that Go released a security update this week.
Yeah, that's true.
And we're auditing whether or not that has an impact on Helm. And if it does, then we will definitely kick out a security patch as soon as we can. So it is likely, it is possible that 351 would ship earlier, and 352 would be the actual one that shipped during our regularly scheduled patch window.
Yeah, and if the Go release impacts us, we'll be shipping a 351 here with only changes for the security issue, none of the other patches. All right. All right, my performance topic here. So I've been looking at Helm and saying, hey, there's places we could do performance improvements. And I was wondering what folks think. The first one that I noticed here, and this is just me rambling at this point, so feel free to diverge. We are always pulling down these index.yaml updates, right? And we pull down the whole file. Now, if you ever followed the chart stable repo that we had, you ended up with an 8 meg YAML file. Now, that isn't nice to pull down, especially when you're pulling it down over and over and over with running updates and things like that, where it's automated. It's not performant, nor is it performant to parse and go through, because YAML is slow to parse. If you dig into the parsers, that's actually because you can have references. And so you need to keep track of all of that when you parse it and you assemble your object. That's why JSON is just so much faster to parse and to deal with, because you don't have to deal with references, which makes YAML more difficult, both memory and in operations. And so I've been looking at ways we could possibly do this. One thing we can do is you could actually look to see if the E tag changed, right? If an E tag is present, and if it hasn't, then don't pull down the file. It's one of those simple operations you can do that may be able to stop you from doing an update because you already know you've got the latest. And I've been poking around, and a lot of places produce the E tag. And there's other headers we could use as well, and start to keep track of that internally, and only pull down if there's a change. And I know things like GitHub Pages do provide an E tag. So it's one of those things that we could key off of and not pull down an update unless somebody passed like a flag to force it.
Right. So these are essentially the general HTTP cache headers that we should be using.
Yeah.
Aren't using. Okay.
And so we could look at bringing that kind of thing through with the HTTP library. Now, other things would have to implement their own way of handling it. So if you had a downloader, we'd have to do this in the downloader plugin and then try to manage that up through the interface. That's where the hard part comes in. Because if you're doing to some custom system, you may not have the same kind of headers, and you may have your own way of doing caching. But that's the kind of thing that we could look at flowing through to everything. How does something like that sound?
That sounds like a great idea to me.
The next thing that came to mind was something that came up a long time ago at a Helm Summit. Index.json. Start with an index.json, and if it's not present, fall back to an index.yaml and pull that down instead, and then have our tool start generating an index.json next to an index.yaml, because the JSON file will just be so much faster and less memory to import. What do you all think about that as a fallback option?
You mean allow the server to have an index JSON and an alternative to index YAML?
Yeah. And if it's present, then use the index.json. If not, fall back to the index.yaml. Expect them both to have the same information, because an index.json file, it's just so much faster to parse and deal with memory. And when you think about this, Chart Center, we ran into, I mean, if you ever tried to do Helm repo up on like the stable charts repo, which was just massive, it took a long time and a lot of memory. There were some folks who set their Helm commands to running containers that didn't have enough memory in that container's runtime, and they'd run into issues because it used so much memory and processing power to do it in the end. And if you get into a DevOps world where people are just constantly pushing charts into, say, Chart Museum or something, you can end up in that situation where you've just got so many things in there because you're always delivering and always pushing, that it can be a performance problem. And JSON would solve that. In fact, I think it was the JFrog folks who came up with this. So right now, like Chart Center, because they generate this gigantic index.yaml file for like everything they can get their hands on. In order to make that work, they've actually stripped out as much as they can from it because it's too much to parse. All of the annotations and all the metadata that's not displayed, they have to cut that out because it's just too much for Helm to handle. and they came up with the idea of an index.json file. Yes, you can add an item in this discussion, by the way.
I think that sounds good. Would you eventually in Helm 4 plan to just drop index YAML if index.json is significantly faster, more performant?
I would guess no, but maybe.
Short time frame, maybe.
Yeah.
Once you do a breaking change, that would probably be.
Is there a potential security issue here with if, say, a chart repository has just an index.yaml, but then say there is an attacker that somehow uploads a malicious index.json, that would be taken as precedence over the index.yaml, and that could potentially lead to downloading malicious charts from other locations. Is that an angle that could be construed as a security issue, or is that more of a...
Well, if they can place an index.json file there to begin with, they can already alter the index.yaml file to point you to malicious things.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose there's the potential for a backward break for a compatibility break if people were hosting chart repositories on the same server that also happen to have an index.json, but the likelihood of that is probably exceedingly low.
And we can probably go ahead.
I'm wondering if maybe if we were to, instead of like saying looking for an index.json and taking that as the source of truth, what if we were to try and do a lookup on the index.yaml path before, and if we hit a redirect to a JSON file in another location, then we could use that and load that? Or would that be a different problem altogether?
That might break like older clients.
Yeah, because they're relying on 301 redirects, aren't they? In some locations.
So an easy way to start digging into this is we could go say Artifact Hub. Artifact Hub produces an API where we can get all of the Helm repositories out of it. And we could walk through all of those repositories and see if any of them have an index.json file to begin with, to even see if anything we know of has conflicts. So at least it's an idea worth going after. So now that I brought those two things up, I want to seed it because somebody had a question about Helm repositories with Git.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a question, but so a while ago, a coworker from Red Hat and I we started working on a project to add a Git Helm repository with a Git. It's complicated because too many repositories. It is a Helm repository with the data being stored on a Git repository in memory. Right. So basically what we've done was to leverage libgit and basically create a Helm repository with the API that the Helm repository expects, but with the data behind being stored on a Git repository. So the idea is that this service, it would be stateless basically, and it could load Helm charts from a specific Helm repository, and then make it available through the API endpoints that Helm expect. So one of the experiments that we've done, and I thought it was really cool, is that we've basically spit the tarballs on the fly. So basically, we packaged the Helm charts on the fly based on the query of the user. So basically, we took as an example, we created a repository with, I guess we took this table, the reference a Helm repository, we loaded into Git, and we could be able to, we were able to get tarballs directly out of Git using this thing. I can paste. I think that it can be related to what you said regarding regarding the index YAML and index JSON. So basically, the software that we have, I will paste the Git repository. it produces the index.yaml for you based on the contents of the repository as well. So basically, it uses a Git repository as a database. The idea behind it was to actually make it easier, right? Because the developer is always writing code, pushing to a Helm repository, to a Git repository, and then we need to make a tarball and then send the tarball to be served somewhere and stuff like that. What we wanted to do was to facilitate a little bit that, and we basically got into a stage where we could link a repository, Git repository, to a Helm repository, and then being able to slurp that. Yes, I do have a link, and it's on Otavio's repository. So Otavio was doing the integration with libgit and stuff. So basically the idea, like I said, is to facilitate the development, right? So we could push, like the idea is to have the developer pushing to a GitHub repository, the server pulling the data out of a Git repository where the Helm chart, the Helm repository data is located, and then start serving. The idea is also to support Semver as well. So basically, you could use Semver to get a specific version on a specific branch, right? So you could facilitate as well the development for your peers. So basically, you could use Semver to indicate, like, I want the version 2.2 from the branch of Matt, right? Or one to the to 1.0.1, the branch, like, or a SHA-1 directly, like I want the version, the version of this chart on this specific SHA-1 from Git. So all those ideas we try to explore on that. So yeah, so that was, I just wanted to throw, like, if you think that whether or not this would be interesting, if you already thought about that, if you didn't do because of reason or something.
Yeah, I'm looking at the project. This is really cool.
Yeah, so this is really neat. Helm itself, when it comes to doing a chart repository, just does something very simple in a flat file system sort of manner, so that way it can be hosted anywhere. It was not meant to be the end-all be-all of chart repositories, which is why you've seen them with Chart Museum. You've seen stuff come out of Artifactory and other systems that will do some of this for you. Because we're hopeful others can go implement and use the same API. And so I like seeing things that are able to use the API and do interesting stuff with it. Is this still developed?
We did develop it, but we stopped developing it because we didn't know, like, we weren't sure if people would be interested or not until we got the opportunity to get well, this meeting and someone saying that is cool, so that's cool.
No, it's cool. What I would suggest is put it out there, do a little like dev marketing around it and social marketing around it, and see whether folks pick it up. I'm going to go take a look at it myself and see what comes of it. But very cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we also in the Helm documentation, we do for any kind of community projects, there is a like related projects and documentation section where we do like point out and call out these kind of projects. So if you're interested in posting it and sharing it over there, we can helpfully point you in the right direction. And then Karina, on your question about would this be a HIP, I think the nice thing about this is that it demonstrates the chart repository API is very flexible, like what Farina mentioned earlier. And really, I think that's where, if there were changes that we needed to do to the chart repository API to handle certain use cases, I think that would be the right place for like Helm improvement proposal. I think we have the chart repository API documented in the official documentation, but we don't have a Helm improvement proposal for that because it's just been kind of in doctrine since, I don't know, did Helm 1 use the chart repository API? No, it was introduced in Helm 2, right? I'm specifically looking at Butcher, but I think that's as far as I understand it. It was introduced in Helm 2. So yeah, cool.
Okay, cool. So I will check and then we can talk further then. Thank you, Matt. Matt's.
All right. Before we go further, I wanted to take a minute and come up with a moderator notes and issue triage for the next week. Does anybody want to volunteer for any of this?
I can help with notes. This is Jasper.
All right, Jasper on notes. Anybody want to moderate?
I can help with triage.
Since nobody's signing up for moderator, I again can do it next week.
I'll do it, Farina. You don't have to do it 2 weeks in a row.
All right, Bridget, thank you. Okay, we had Joe's not on to continue the other discussion.
We'll defer that one to next week. He has something come up.
Is there anything else anyone would like to talk about?
Just in continuing docs, I did link to, and we'll put a link in the notes, but I linked Igor to the place on GitHub where literally he can go add a link to the related projects. So people can, as well as, any social marketing he does, but he can also make it more discoverable via the Helm docs. Mm-hmm. And we encourage anyone who has related projects that are getting uptake to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have anything else, or should we give everyone 5 minutes back? I don't see anyone jumping at the bit. So y'all get 5 minutes back. Thank you for coming. We'll be back here next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.